Paratmanamekam jagadbijamadyam niriham nirakaram onkara vidyam yato jayate palyate yena vishvam tamisham bhaje liyate yatra vishvam. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. My pranams to revered Swami Suparnanandaji Maharaj. My namaskars and regards to Professor Nirmalya Narayan Chakraborty, Professor Jonathan Ganeri, and my namaskars and regards to all the distinguished speakers who have assembled here from different parts of India and even abroad. And my regards and namaskars to all the eminent audience assembled here. At the very outset, I thank the organizers to have given me this chance to express my views on this a very important subject, the realm of the mental. What I feel is, to say that the realm of the mental is an important area is a kind of understatement. It is not one of the important subjects that human beings have to deal with. What I feel is, the realm of the mental is the subject which every human being has to negotiate with. Why? At the human plane of existence, our Shastras, they tell us that the mental realm becomes dominant. It is only at the human plane that the mental realm becomes predominant in this entire creation. In all other species, whether it is animals, the plant kingdom, or all other species, they are purely physical. Their whole life is centered in sensory system and the physical structure alone. It is when we come to the human plane of existence, just visualize this entire creation itself. It is at this plane of existence, the realm of the mental dominates everything. What is the difference between one human being and another human being? Or if I ask, how do we describe human life itself? The best answer to this question is, human life is nothing but the realm of the mental functioning in a certain direction and in a certain way. It is this realm of the mental functioning in a certain direction and in a certain way which distinguishes one human being from the other human being. Therefore, to say that exploring the realm of the mental is an important subject is actually speaking an understatement, because when it comes to the human plane of existence, the realm of the mental is the realm which every human being has to explore. And the more we have the knowledge about this realm, the more control we gain over this realm. We all know very well that knowledge of a certain phenomenon and the control over it, they go hand in hand. the more we have knowledge about the physical dimension of this world, to that extent we have got mastery over it, control over it. And the same is applicable to the mental realm as well. The more we have knowledge about this dynamics of the realm of the mental, the more mastery and control we gain over it. And human life, qualitatively speaking, and as far as the sufferings and the tormentations which every human being has to go through, it all depends to the extent we have gained the mastery over the realm of the mental. So again, I come to the main point to say that this exploration is one of the important explorations, is an understatement, because as human beings, you and me, all of us, it is the realm of the mental which actually decides everything, the way it functions and the direction in which it functions. Now, when we talk about the realm of the mental, we all know there are three aspects to it: cognition, volition, and emotion. Now, cognition itself is a very interesting, very important area in which a lot of studies and research has been done. And interestingly, it has given birth to a new science altogether, known as cognitive sciences. And the outcome of this cognitive science has also contributed immensely to the area of education, giving rise to new theories of how human beings learn. How do we gain knowledge? So these are all connected areas. So when we talk about cognition, it's a very significant area which has today developed into a science of cognition or cognitive sciences. So before I get into, I know this is a very vast subject. To speak about this in a matter of 30 minutes is too audacious an attempt. But still, in my next 15-20 minutes, I shall keep my deliberation as brief as possible. I shall be just touching upon a few moot points. And I'm sure all the distinguished thinkers and speakers who have assembled here, they will be shedding further light on these points and areas, and it is going to be a very illuminating and, humanly speaking, enriching experience for all the audience present here. Now, one point. When we discuss this realm of the mental, of course, there are several point of views, the Oriental point of view, the Western point of view, and most of the speakers are going to speak in English. And I personally feel English language is very severely incapable when it comes to conveying certain ideas which are present in the so-called Vedic system of thought. So we will have to be very alert about the semantics of the whole deliberation, so that we don't give rise to conceptions which would be blurred in its nature or confusing in its nature. So in my deliberation here for the next 15-20 minutes, I shall try to stick to those very Sanskrit terms as much as possible without trying to translate it into English, which has got its own different connotations based upon the background. So this is one thing which we have to keep in mind when we deliberate upon this subject. And my deliberation is essentially going to be from the Vedic standpoint, which would include also the Sankhya and Yoga systems of thought. Now, when we talk about exploring the realm of the mental, there are four important principles that we have to keep in mind. The first principle, number one, this entire creation which we are experiencing here It can be categorized into two. I repeat once again. This entire creation which we are experiencing here, it can be categorized into two. One is consciousness, and the other is matter. In the Vedic system of thought, it is a grand conclusion. As long as we are ignorant about the reality, this categorization stands valid. When the supreme knowledge dawns, then this categorization is lost. Then what remains is only consciousness. But before the dawn of the supreme knowledge, this categorization is essential for us to understand the dynamics of what we are experiencing. So this whole creation can be categorized into consciousness and matter. In Sanskrit, the better terms are Chaitanya and Jada. Still going further, in the Vedantic parlance, it can be referred to as Brahman and Maya. Still going further, from the Sankhyan standpoint point of view, we can say it is Purusha and Prakriti. Now, just one word of caution here. The Sankhyan Purusha is not the same as the Vedantic Brahman. I'm not going into the details of it. To put it in a very simple language, according to the Sankhya philosophers, Purusha or consciousness is multiple and many. Prakriti is one. But according to Vedanta, consciousness is indivisible whole. So just leaving aside this one small differentiation, the categorization between consciousness and matter is a valid categorization, whether it is from the standpoint of Sankhya or from the standpoint of Vedanta. It's a beautiful categorization. This entire creation is nothing but a play of consciousness and matter. Second principle. This great theme of exploration of the mental, when we talk about mind, or the realm of the mind, let us make this point very clear. This mental realm is just as much material as a piece of wood is material. And just as a piece of wood can be given a shape, it can be transformed into a wood, it can be transformed into a piece of furniture, a table or a chair. Similarly, the realm of the mental can be given a favorable shape. This is the greatest adventure that can be taken up only at the human plane of existence. No other species can do this. So, the second big principle is, this realm of the mental is as much material as a piece of stone is matter or a piece of wood is matter. Consciousness is different from it. Third principle. Everything in this creation, apart from consciousness, undergoes continuous change. Pratikshanam anyatha svabhava. Pratikshanam, every moment, anyatha svabhava. Its form, its content keeps on changing. Everything is getting modified. The realm of the mental is also constantly getting modified. The only thing which doesn't get modified and changed is consciousness. The fourth principle, which is the most relevant principle, I won't say the most relevant, all these points are actually very connected and important, but for our discussion about cognition and the other experiences of volition and emotion, there comes the importance of this fourth principle. This fourth principle is also a very well-established principle in the Vedic literature, but it has been put forth beautifully by a Sankhyan teacher whose name was Panchashikha. This great Sankhyan teacher, Panchashikha, says, in Sanskrit, the principle is laid down in these following words. It says, Ekameva darshanam, khyatireva darshanam. I repeat once again. Ekam eva darshanam, kyatireva darshanam. What does it mean? It means that darshanam, the Sanskrit word darshanam here means cognition. To have cognition, there is only one way. Panchashika says, Sankhya says, the whole of the Vedic literature says this. What is that? How do we have cognition? It says, cognition is not possible without the involvement of a mental modification, which is known as khyati. The term ekameva darshanam, khyati reva darshanam. Khyati here means vritti. Vritti in Sanskrit, if you have to just translate it into English language, we have to say it is the modification of the mind into a certain form. Without this mind getting modified into a certain form, there cannot be any cognition. Neither the cognition of any object in this world, nor even the cognition of the Atman. For both these cognitions, we need the mental modification, which is known as antakarana vritti in Sanskrit. Now, going deeper into this issue, now I have used this word antakarana vritti. This is again a very profound verity which we are touching upon. And what does it mean? Now see, we as human beings, we have three bodies. Externally speaking, we just see the physical body, the physical structure. But every human being is made up of three bodies. One is the gross body which we see on the surface. The second body is the subtle body. And the third body is the causal body. In Sanskrit, the terms are sthula sharira, the gross body. The subtle body is referred to as sukshma sharira or linga sharira. And the causal body is referred to as karana sharira. Now, when we are talking about the mental realm, the realm of the mental, we are actually touching upon the subtle body. So the whole focus of our discussion is going to be the subtle body, not the gross body. Now, in the subtle body itself is made up of 17 components. I'm not going into the details of that. It will take a long time. Out of these 17 components, there is one component which will be the focus of our attention, which in the Vedas is referred to as antakaranam. Again, I don't want to translate antakaranam as mind. It's a totally wrong translation. Antakaranam is not equal to mind. So what does this antakaranam mean? This needs to be understood properly. Opposed to this word called antakaranam, we have another term called bahishkaranam. Karanam means instrument. So bahishkaranam means external instrument, and antakaranam means internal instrument. Without these instruments, no one in this world or creation can cognize anything in this world. In all cognition, these karanas, these instruments are involved. So the outward instruments are the five sense organs that we have, we all know that. But the sense organs by themselves, they cannot give us cognition unless the internal instrument is attached to it. So here comes the predominance of the internal instruments. It is this internal instrument which is referred to as antakaranam. Anta means internal and karanam means instrument. Again, what is the nature of this antakaranam? Now we are coming to the realm of the mental. Our whole exploration will be into this one entity called antakaranam. Here lies the whole mystery of this creation itself. It is such a fascinating investigation into what is reality about this wonderful thing called antakaranam. So, what is this antakaranam made up of? The Vedas tell us that The antakaranam is one. But based upon 4 different kinds of functions which it performs, it has been given 4 different names based upon the functions which it is performing. For example, when we see a pot or a human being, what happens? This antakaranam, it takes the form, antakaranam, this entire antakaranam, it takes the form of the pot. And when it takes the form of the pot, when the antakaranam is not able to determine whether this is a pot or something else, this indeterminate state of the antakaranam is what is referred to as manas in Sanskrit, which is translated as mind. Again, I see, just look into the difficulties of semantics. When we use the word mind in a very loose manner, having different kinds of connotations based upon different backgrounds, it can create a kind of wrong conceptions in the minds of the listeners. That's why I'm trying to be as specific and categorical as much as possible. So what does manas mean in the Vedic system of thought? That indeterminate state of the antakaranam, where the antakaranam is not able to decide whether this is a human being or whether it is a stump of a tree. This indeterminate state of the antakaranam is what is referred to as manas. In Sanskrit, it is described or defined as sankalpa vikalpatnika antakarana vritti. Now, when this very antakaran becomes sure about that this is a pot, this is not a table, when it becomes sure about this is a human being and it is not a stump of tree, this determinate state of the internal organ or antakaranam is what is referred to as buddhi. Again, very loosely translated as intellect in the English language, which does not fully convey what actually buddhi refers to. So, antakaranam, when it comes to a determinate conclusion about what it is perceiving, that determinate state of this internal organ is what is referred to as buddhi. The same antakaranam, when it remembers what it had seen in the past, that function, owing to that function, that very antakaranam is referred to as chitta, chittam. Anusandhatatmika antakarana vritti is chittam. Again, the same antakaranam or internal instrument, when it connects itself with the object which is cognized in a certain manner, say it begins to connect itself with the object saying that this pot belongs to me, or I want to acquire this pot, or I am going to take this pot home, something like that, in which the I sense is involved, then that very antakaranam becomes ahankara, this which is the center of volition. Now you see, it is one internal instrument which is referred to in the Vedic system of thought as antakaranam, which has been given 4 different names based upon 4 different types of functions it performs in our day-to-day life. So this is so much about the antakaranam, the internal instrument, which is made up of mana, buddhi, chitta and ahankara, loosely translated as mind, intellect, memory and the sense of I or ego, which is the center of volition. Now this is actually the realm of the mental which we are going to explore in the next 2 days. Now, going still further into this exploration of this antakaranam, how do we exactly cognize things in this world? It's the most fascinating subject which has been very elaborately taken upon by all the great seers of the Vedic system of thought. And it has been very detailed, threadbare, discussed by the great masters. So according to the Vedas, what happens when we cognize? First of all, see, we are coming to cognition. Cognition can be the cognition of an object in this world, or it can be the cognition of the Atman, the self. That is also a cognition. Both are cognitions, remember. So one is the cognition of the objective world which we are experiencing, and the other is the cognition of the consciousness which is behind the antakaranam itself. And as I said in the beginning, in both these cognitions, the involvement of antakarana vritti is indispensable. You cannot do away with the mental modification. The mental modification is essential, both for the objective kind of cognition as far as the cognition of the Atman. Now, how do we cognize an object? So the great masters, they have, in Panchadashi, a beautiful verse comes which tells it is not the author of Panchadashi who is giving out some new idea. It is a well-established principle given in the Vedas itself. But Swami Vidyaranya, he puts it in a beautiful Sanskrit sloka, which gives in a very categorical manner how cognition takes place. So the author of Panchadashi says, Buddhi tatstha chidabhaso dvau api vyapnotu ghatam tatra ajnanam dhyanashet abhasena ghata spuret. What does it mean? To put it in a very simple language, it means that, see, when we perceive or cognize a pot, what is happening is, when we cognize a pot, it is a visual cognition. So we can have cognition, visual cognition, auditory cognition, olfactory cognition. These are all cognitions. When the antakarana vritti is associated with a particular sense organ, then we cognize that particular sense object. It may be a visual object, it may be sound, it can be a sense of touch, it can be smell, it can be any of one of the 5 sense organs. So the great masters, they say that when we see a pot, when we have a visual cognition, what is happening is this antakaranam, this inner instrument, getting associated with the organ of eye, it assumes, it takes the form of the pot. Again I repeat, the antakaranam is modifying itself into the shape of the pot, and then the consciousness which is reflected in the antakaranam, which is referred to as reflected consciousness. In Sanskrit the word is chidabhasa. It is this chidabhasa which illumines this pot, and then we have the knowledge that this is pot. This is the dynamics of cognition as far as the Vedic system of thought is concerned. To put it in a very simple language, so what is cognition or what is knowledge? In knowledge, these two components are invariably involved. Whenever we have knowledge about something, you can see that these two components are invariably involved. One is antakarana vritti, and the second is the reflected consciousness, which illumines that object which is cognized. Without the interplay of these two things, consciousness and the mental modification, without the interplay of these two things, we cannot have knowledge, we cannot have cognition. So this is what is actually, which goes into the cognition of a particular object in this world. As I said, what about the cognition of the Atman? That is also very important, in fact the most important area of the human life. As I said, when it comes to the human plane of existence, the mental realm and the supramental realm, by supramental realm I mean the Atman. These are the areas which dominate the human life itself. What is human life unless we explore into these areas? It is absolutely a worthless life as long as we have not paid attention to this dimension of human personality. So what happens in the cognition of the Atman? This is another very important point. There is one very big important difference when it comes to the cognition of the Atman. In the cognition of the Atman also, there is an interplay between consciousness and the antakarana vritti, but with one major difference. In the cognition of an object, it is the Chidabhasa or the reflected consciousness which illumines this pot, and we have the knowledge that this is a pot. But as far as the experience of Atman or Brahman is concerned, the mental modification is very much present there, the antakarana vritti is very much present there in a certain way, but the reflected consciousness has got no role to play as far as illumining Brahman or Atman is concerned. This is a great difference between the cognition of an object in our life and the cognition of the Atman. When it comes to the Atman, the reflected consciousness is unable to illumine the real Atman and Brahman itself. It is just like, to give a very simple example for us to understand, do we need a torchlight to illumine the sunlight? It is not needed. Reflected consciousness is like a torchlight. And the real consciousness, which is Atman or Brahman, is like a sunlight. So the reflected consciousness in the antakarana has got no role to play as far as illumining the real consciousness is concerned. So what happens there? It's a matter of experience which cannot be put in words. So, my dear friends, these are the simple, very important mood points which I wanted to keep before all of you. I know this is a very vast subject, and just to wind up my whole talk, I want to just keep certain points once again before you, very important points. As I said, the realm of the mind is as much material as a piece of wood is a matter. It is a realm which is continuously changing, and in every cognition, we should remember that the involvement of the mental modification or the antakarana vritti is indispensable. You cannot do away with it, whether you cognize a pot or whether you cognize the Atman. The involvement of a mental vritti is indispensable. And to just give a concluding remark, the great rishis of the Vedas, they have said, actually speaking, we are all just reflectors. Every human being, every mind, every antakarana, it is just a reflector, it is just a mirror in which the light of consciousness is reflecting. What are we seeing here? Men and women? No, these are all just reflectors in which the light of consciousness is getting reflected. And this mental realm can be better understood only from the vantage point of that pure consciousness, which is referred to as Atman. The mystery of the realm of the mental becomes demystified from the standpoint of the Atman. Thank you so much.